Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Aftermath Hours, a weekly podcast from Aftermath.site, a worker owned, reader supported website about video games, the internet, and everything that comes after. Aftermath is fully reader supported at this point. That may change a little bit in the future for this podcast specifically, but for the time being, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe at aftermath.site/products. I am Nathan Grayson, and today I'm joined by Chris Person
Hey guys, what's going on?
and special guest Chris Plant.
Hello. It's so nice to hear the sexy Nathan After Hours intro in person, to actually see it. It's really
Hours,
good.
yeah. It's beautiful. I
Also,
witness it every
I've got to
time.
let everyone know. I've got to let everyone know that I will be legally changing my name to Chris for the purposes of this episode, so that we can have
Perfect.
three Chris's at once. A kind of Chris Hydra, or I guess Cerberus would be the more apt point of comparison.
Kind of the Trinity, sort of. If you think of them all as Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Oh
Holy
yeah,
Spirit's
yeah.
also named Chris. God's also named Chris. I wasn't
Yeah.
raised with Christianity, but did go to Catholic school and then just went to the library during mass, so I know a lot about this stuff.
Yeah. Also, yeah. So, for those who do not know, Chris Plant, not person, used to be at Polygon, and then things happened there, and now he's hosting a show called Post Games.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, how's life after Polygon treating you?
I mean, it's treating me very well. It's always tricky talking about it because so many people were, impacted. But if I am just talking about myself and I'm being honest, I'm really enjoying what I'm making. There's like I feel like everybody here has worked in media for a long enough time that you know that there's kind of cycles to media and cycles to your career. And I had not been making stuff really hands on a daily basis for a long time. And whether it was like by choice or not, getting thrown back into that world to just tell stories for people week after week after week, in my case, on audio, it feels really nice. Am I like worried about, my health insurance and things like that? Oh yeah. But like, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, baby. Um, but yeah, it has been nice to get back into telling stories.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, obviously Polygon had a lot of written content, video content, and stuff like that as well. You ended up choosing a podcast for a format that I think is pretty like unique and distinctive among video game podcasts, in that it is kind of more journalistically angled. Why did you decide to go with a podcast as opposed to like launching a Substack or whatever?
Yeah, I wanted to go where I wouldn't get my ass kicked. Was basically it. Like I looked around the field, and the great thing about working and running a publication like Polygon is you really get a feel for the competition. And there are so many things that I felt I personally couldn't do. I couldn't run a big site because I couldn't ramp it up. I couldn't get capital for it. Um, I not like somebody who's like competent in things like guides, so I'm not going to get the fuel for that. When I say not competent, like they're just people who are better at it than me at like writing it, producing it. They worked for me at times. And then I looked at like the newsletter space. I'm like, oh great, I can go up against Stephen Titillo and Simon Carlos and Nicole Carpenter and so many other names. I could go on and on and on, and a bunch of people who are writing as hobbyists but are just like absolutely incredible. And I would get thrashed. Same thing when I looked at YouTube, and it basically was like this thing of like every door I opened, there was a party already going on. And then I got to like audio, and there's a lot in audio, but there wasn't a lot of the type of thing that I like to do, which is
Mhm.
narrative and reporting, storytelling. And once I realized that, it was like, oh, finally some space. Finally, some like room that I can start to set up, and I'm not gonna get just immediately bombarded by a bunch of people who've already been doing it for a long time, and are just frankly better than I am at it. So it was a matter of just kind of sniffing out where I thought I had a shot. And then I,
Mhm.
I I've been doing a podcast called The Besties for I don't know like 13 years or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
and I already have a relationship with like a really large audience in audio, so I should have thought that from the start. I would like to say like, well, I already knew, like I already do audio, but it was more of a backwards epiphany of, oh yeah, like I should do the thing that serves the like audience that I have a personal relationship with. And that's kind of how I got there.
It is fascinating to sort of like make an assessment of like who's doing what thing, because it is like, you know, I want there to be a bigger budget's a wrong way of putting it. An audience doesn't work either, because I want something that's somewhere in between, you know, like an audience that pays, I guess, a subscriber
Yeah.
fee. You know what I mean? Like I want there to be more money in the space that is, I want the space to be bigger so that there are more people who are willing to support media, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I like an active user base as opposed to like a passive one. And like you do under internally are like, okay, here are the limits of what we have currently, at least, you know, what is known, the known world. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I think there are more people out there who do want that sort of thing. And the question is, how do you break out of that?
Yeah. I mean, I always feel a bit crass talking about it, but the other thing I realized when Polygon ended for me and I switched over here is Polygon was a youth entertainment audience, right? And the youth audience, they expect news and anything that would be seen as like work for them in some way, heavy work, as being free. And then like they'll pay for their friends and their parasocial relationships. But what you see about like people in their 30s to their 50s is they've been donating to PBS and NPR and so many other places forever. Like that's just what you do when you get old.
Yeah.
And I
You immediately start
I knew
donating to PBS. It's
yeah.
like overnight.
And I knew that I couldn't make young people content forever. And I think kind of realized quickly like, oh, I want to make people like content. I want to make stories for people my age. And those happen to be the people who are prepared to like pay and
Yeah.
will actually support me, right? So it like I said, I wish I could say that it was like some like grand epiphany, but it does feel like I kind of just happened to find all these different notes that kind of sang in harmony.
Yeah.
Hmm. When it comes to doing this kind of a thing, well, first, like, did you have the idea kind of kicking around even like pre the kind of, you know, upheaval at Polygon, or was this sort of a like, you know, that ended and then you sat down and said, okay, what do I want to do now? And this is what came to mind.
Yeah, I always have ideas floating around of like, okay, what if a bird flew into the engine of the plane and I needed to go look for, you know, a parachute. So and that really got intense right around the beginning of the pandemic, honestly. So I didn't know I had really, really, really bad anxiety my entire life. I thought I was just
Oh.
like precociously productive, and stressed about it all the time and sad. But no, it turns out I had like anxiety, and I discovered that after I had my son and the pandemic happened. And it was this really, really tough time where my wife and I had moved to Austin, Texas, where we didn't really know a lot of people. We had gone through a miscarriage, then we had our son, then I had my anxiety reveal, and around this time I'm becoming the editor in chief of Polygon, and then the pandemic happens. And it felt like my entire world was like blowing up. And in that
Mhm.
I really sought control of something. Like what's the thing that I can just own? Because the weird thing about becoming an editor in chief, and sorry, this is a long walk for a small glass of water, but it's like it's all about, I think, when you're good at it, ceding control. It's all about like
Mhm.
empowering lots of people to do more things. So while all of that was happening, I was like, I want to make a newsletter that just circulates links of all the great stuff that I see happening in games. Like that feels like a thing. It's a small thing. I can test it,
Mhm.
and I made it, and it was called Post Games, which or maybe even Post Game. I don't know, but that like it was
Mhm.
the original kernel of hey, I want to go do something, and it did well enough that I ended up moving it inside of Polygon, and then didn't really think about the idea of like what's next for a while. But I was always wondering, like, I guess I was always wondering how indie media would work eventually, because it felt almost
Mhm.
inevitable that everyone's going to have their moment in indie media. Like the way that media works right now, you're going to, that's going to be part of your tour in the same way that like working at Hearst or News Corp or Vanity Fair or a local newspaper or any of these other things would be in a past. So it was always in my head. I was always very curious about it. I was always like, I met with Ben Hansen at one point, maybe earlier this year. I was asking around whenever I went to kind of like editor group dinners in New York, and it was always there, but it didn't really like, I don't know, metastasize is a negative word. It didn't really like gel until I got thrown, out, and then right away it's like all of that stuff, all of those materials that you had like accumulated over the past 4 years or whatever. Some years like banging on all of them, trying to see how they jam together.
Yeah. Not to go back too far in the conversation, but I am going to be stealing "Long Walk for a Small Glass of Water" because that's an amazing phrase that I had not heard before.
Thank you. That is real folksy growing up in the Midwest shit right there.
Yeah, phenomenal. But yeah, and so another thing that I was wondering is, because I feel like as we've established Aftermath, we've kind of figured out like what our kind of purviews are, or like the things that people enjoy that we do. Because I think that in this day and age, the notion of like a video game website or a video game podcast or whatever else is a little bit anachronistic. Like trying to cover all of it is just sort of like that's not even necessarily what audiences are into anymore.
Yeah.
I think everything's a little bit more atomized and people want a specific place to do a specific thing as opposed to trying to like,
Right.
cram all of it into one box.
I-
And so like,
yeah.
do you have kind of a specific purview that you view as yours, or are you right now just sort of trying things to see what sticks?
Well, I want to hear it from Chris. It
Oh no,
looked like
it's
you had a
just
thought about like,
yeah. Well, also you get burned out. Like
yeah,
you do get burned out if you only limit yourself to video games. Also, I don't know. This is like something I think about quite a bit because my trajectory was basically I was video exclusively at
yeah,
Kotaku for years, and I did do some blogging, so I knew how to blog. I could get a blog up. I knew I knew. I feel like saying street journalism is a weird way to put it. You know what I mean? Like it's very like practical meat and potatoes. Get that shit up. I knew that,
yeah,
and I knew posting,
Mhm.
and I had done writing before, and it's something I cared about, but it wasn't like what I did until I went to The Verge for like 2 months because Krantz and other people were like, "Hey, I see something that you got, and like, could you cover for a couple months because you're always posting about this shit?" And I'm like, yes, and then that became my inline into being like into sort of expanding the parameters of what games what games coverage, but also what the coverage of a site ended up being. You know what I mean? The
oh,
way
for sure.
I deal with hardware is that like I don't see things. I don't see the way hardware that I'm interested in ever gets talked about outside of like hacker news or something like that. Occasionally, or like weirdly specific YouTubes or subreddits or weird Discords, and like that became the thing that I was interested in more, is like the sort of tangential thing, but it took a while to get to there and to find and it makes me like when I do want to blog about games, it makes it fresh still.
Yes, yes, 100%. I'm glad that you said all that because it will tie into my answer, and I hope I hope I answered the original question right. But the big thing that I just asked myself when I was launching Polygon, or I asked it then too, but when I was launching Post Games, was what would I actually pay for? What would I
Mm.
actually pay $5 a month for? And
Hmm.
the reality is like not much. Like there's a lot of things that I love. There's a lot of things that like I love and I want to support more, and I hit the paywall on them, and I'm like, God damn, I just not today. And it takes me a while to get around to like paying for them. But if you have something that at least you believe deeply, like, oh, of course I would spend $5 for that. I think the subscribers can feel it, or the people who might come on board,
Mm-hmm.
and there are probably more people out there like you. And Chris, you're honestly like the perfect example of this for me because I subscribe to Aftermath for like many reasons. But I've said this publicly. Like, Chris is like tech shit is like is my like lifeblood. We are just like, you know, in line in that way. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Chris, when you were at The Verge, and we were talking then of like, it felt like you had unlocked a thing for them. Like you are still a bit of a legend there with Neeli. And I think when you are making something that is so deeply for yourself, you're just more likely to find other people. So
Yeah.
I asked that for me. And the thing that I came to was, and this adds to the podcast part of it, what has to be something that I will actually listen to. Because it's the only type of media that I consistently consume. Like, I do not make an effort to read every newsletter, even the best ones that I love. I do not read every story that goes on a website. But if I like a podcast, I will not miss an episode. So, like, for me, I know that if I'm the target audience, it needs to be that. And then I know that I do not listen to any podcasts that are over 2 hours, or I do, but I only listen to the first hour, right? Like there are all these things that started to sculpt the material for me. For me, like I want to be surprised and I want to learn every single time I come into a show. So, well, if I know that, then suddenly it clarifies what the topics are that I'm doing. So I'm probably not doing business topics because there's not a lot about surprising in the business side of the games industry. It's important, but it's certainly not surprising. It's mostly like familiar and bleak. So all of those things start whittling down what my purview is, even though I think it would be hard to look at like the topics that I've chosen and it's like how this young banker dude is making Atari not suck alongside people who make lewd games and porn games and like why you should take them seriously as human beings.
Yeah.
And this week's episode is like a video game writer who they basically exclusively write about death in video games. Like those things don't seem like they're connected, but they all kind of fit in. They all answer like if I had that checklist I just described, they would all pass that checklist.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It's also.
Yeah, I mean, those are all.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry about my slow internet as per usual, because that took like a second. Anyway, it's fine. It's great. I'll get it fixed soon. But yeah, no, those are all really interesting topics. And like, I don't know, they're the kind where I think, yeah, if you're talking about the sort of daily news grind, they don't get touched on significantly because the daily news grind does kind of take on a familiar shape after a while. But there's so much more happening in video games, which I think goes back to what we were saying earlier of this idea of like, it's kind of a fool's errand at this point to try to cover all of video games holistically via a website or a newsletter or whatever else, because there's just so much. But within that, there are all these pockets of opportunity, which I think you're discovering and unearthing and, shining a light on.
Yeah, and it's the cool thing about having a different business model, right? And I'm guessing that y'all have felt this too, is the medium is the message. I know it's tired, but it's just so true. And when the business model is dominant and almost every competition is chasing the page view business model, and then you get out of that, there's just all of these things yet to be discovered that you can do within a different business model.
Yeah.
And I think that's like what's exciting right now. We're seeing so many people be like, it feels like a land grab. Like, holy shit, you can do this? People will pay you to do this? Oh, I should go do that.
But also, like, you're not funneled into the boring shit that, like, you assume there's an audience for, there's an ambient audience for. It, like, changes your relationship with your audience. Because you get to do, like, these long, like the Siva Gunner piece I did like last month, I would have had difficulty pitching that anywhere else. I feel like it might have landed somewhere, but it's like, it's just a hyper specific. It's like, okay, how do you begin to explain that? It's like, okay, it's like a YouTube channel that was parody of a different YouTube channel that was itself like, all they do is mashups and they do like 20 a day and it's kind of a workers cooperative. And it's like, that's hard to like conceptualize until you read it. And then you're like, oh, retroactively that makes sense. And that makes sense based on the audience that you're cultivating. And when you have like authorship, when you have the ability to do the green light and you have the ability to like go on a little detour and like do that for a while, but it's like harder to do the form. Like, yeah, you're right, McLuhan, like Marshall McLuhan, like the medium is the message. It's correct. It's also like it, like the inputs are different. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to like, your relationship to PR becomes slightly different, although it's not gone. like we
Yeah.
still talk with PR, you know what I mean? It's just like we don't have the same needs that like
Yeah.
an
I mean,
IGN has, and they don't have the same needs from us.
honestly, my relationship as PR is better than it's probably ever been
Hmm.
because they're like, wait, you're going to do a 45-minute conversation with this thing, and then it's going to have a 25-minute, like essay in front that actually gives it context? Like, please, we can take this to whoever's paying our bills, and we look like gods.
Yeah.
So it's weird how that has changed. That was not a thing that I expected when I
But
did this.
even
But
even within that, the micro of what they like your relationship is still the same, but the nature of what you want and the nature of what
oh
they
yeah,
invite you, well, not necessarily invite you to, they'll still invite you to shit, but like the nature of like access is different because it's like you don't have to like do an embargo for preview coverage. Your demands are something longer and different and sometimes better, maybe, I guess. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, well, not better or worse, but yeah, I think you're right and different in that like there is a big Battlefield event here, and it's like they
Mhm.
don't need me to go to a Battlefield event. It wouldn't make sense for me to go to a big Battlefield event, but there might be a story down the line where our paths will cross, and
Yeah.
I'll be requesting something that nobody else is asking for. That said, I don't want to knock what all the like major publications
Of
do. I
course.
think that stuff
Yeah.
is good, and I don't even think it's weird. Like earlier we were saying like boring. It's the biggest challenge for that is not that any of that content. Well, I mean, obviously there's gonna be exceptions, but
Yeah,
like
as we said.
most of that type of stuff is good.
Hmm.
It's just so familiar and
Yeah.
it's so
Mhm.
widely available. And I can say, like, as a reporter, the best feeling in the world is when you create something new or
Yeah.
novel, or again, you surprise people. And I can say as a reader that the same is true, right? Like, those are the publications that you favor. To go all the way back to what you were saying originally, Nathan, like, people will only subscribe to Aftermath if they know it will be different. And like, because otherwise everything else is available. And I think that's the part that I'm just really enjoying right now, is the pressure but also the freedom to do the novel, to like figure out what can I do that nobody else is doing, or what can I do differently.
Yeah, and also
Mhm.
like I try to think of like something closer to NPR in the games space or anything like that. The closest I can think of is like Robert Ashley a few years ago did like A Life Well Wasted,
Oh yeah, yeah.
which I
That,
which I
yeah.
really liked. But like I feel like I mean, went on to do other stuff and just generally, but like it's just that was Ashley, wasn't it? I'm sorry, I'm spacing out.
Yeah, I'm desperately
I believe
trying
that's correct.
to do a thing with Robert
Yeah,
soon. I'm praying, because yeah, a huge inspiration for the show, obviously.
and that like is funny
Mhm.
because I don't know. I've talked about sort of the Metal Gear like one upification and just how everything kind of budded off of that. It's just like how the
Yeah,
industry is just people who either on the forums or like worked for them or knew them in any ways.
Mhm.
And like Patrick's Revolver Ocelot just in the background, just like he's been there since the big boss technically raised him, but he's not the oldest person
Yeah, yeah.
there.
He's got an arm grafted
It's
onto
just
I love
his
it.
lost arm now. It
yeah,
makes
yeah.
him believe that he's somebody else. Makes him believe he's a dad.
He's a dad. He's not. He's still single. He lives in a split level just by himself. Just a bunch of dolls.
It's the nanomachines.
Love you so much, man.
Uh,
Just a joke. But there is this like you sort of reach back sometimes, and you're like, oh, that was especially with one up like yours and like sort of podcasting formats. You're like, oh, there was a little bit of that was special at that time, didn't go anywhere, or like there are people there who do things that inspire you, and like, but even then, like they never become a thing unto themselves, or if they do, they just become a limited thing, and that person goes on to do something else, and like those things come back to me often.
Oh, for sure.
Just
Yeah,
like
I mean, the One Up history is rich. I mean, and very personally tied to my own professional history, for better and for worse. In that my very first job was at a company called the UGO that
yeah,
acquired One Up
oh
yeah,
and
God.
basically destroyed it in some sense.
Well, then
But
IGN, I think IGN technically still owns them.
I think that's right. Though I don't know if the site is even
Nope.
online anymore.
I had to
Um,
check because we did this for Inside Baseball Week because did a post about like basically being on the One Up forums and doing like a podcast with actually Jeff Grubb and shit at the time
that
on the
rules.
forums and stuff like that. But like, yeah, I think they technically owned it, and you can go like if you go for a while, if you went, you could go to like the front page and then like one link, and then everything else was dead, and it was just like maybe that you guys don't need to
Oh,
see
the
what I
internet.
posted back then. It's embarrassing, but the I think they have the closest thing to the archives. I'm guessing outside of Internet Archive.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, with all of that said, speaking of things that are no longer available online, there we go, brought it around.
Yeah.
Let's talk about censorship of games on itch and Steam. Um, yeah, this is a story that we already covered to some extent last week, but for those who aren't following it, basically, payment processors and bank companies, credit card companies, basically, put a lot of pressure on both itch and Steam to remove certain adult games, resulting in Steam removing specific ones, itch just delisting pretty much all of them. And this came following basically an online like campaign from this group called Collective Shout that at least has taken credit for a lot of this. Itch also mentioned them. The extent to which maybe they move the gears of this machine is, it's impossible to say. But what that has resulted in is a counter campaign from a bunch of people who do not want those games to be censored and want them to be reinstated. And so there have been people ever since last week calling pretty much round the clock, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and Stripe to basically say like, hey, the things you said to Steam and Itch, unsay them, take it all back, make it the way that it was before. And I basically published a story this week after talking to a bunch of those people, hanging out in their Discord, basically just seeing how they were doing it, because they've been circulating a lot of material to help each other out of like, here are all the numbers you need, here's a script, here's even like variations of the script where it's like you can come in oblivious, you can be like, hey, I wanted to get a game but it's not there, and I talked to some people and they said that it was you guys' fault. Or like you can be kind of more aggressive, like there's a script that threatens a class action lawsuit. All this fun stuff. But yeah, so it's been interesting to follow because, and I think Chris, you were talking a bit about this on Blue Sky, and I sort of lean in the direction that I think you do of this issue where like, will it work? Maybe not. Like, you
Yeah.
have these like major companies, these payment processors that are already kind of oriented in this direction. And if somebody just gives them a little push, then they're like, yeah, we're for sure going to get super censorious about this. But I still feel like what people are doing is worth doing.
No. To be
I
clear,
think. I hope.
I think
Yeah.
it's still worthwhile. I do think it's still worthwhile. I don't think. I think you should. Like. I think you should. I think we're in uncharted territory. So who the fuck knows? First off, like I don't. What will and will not work
Mhm.
before it's tried. I think that there was a sort of facetious logic of like, well, it only took 1,000 people of them calling to get this to happen. It's like, well, because shit goes to the right just by default. You know what I mean? Like if you're a major company and you have liability, particularly right now, you by default are going to just do whatever it is that will not get you yelled at and will not get you in trouble. And I think my gut tells me they are willing to deal with a lot of people that like hentai games more than like anything that could get them in like for real trouble. And I think this is extrapolating. The joke I made was non-zero chance the president ends up talking about hentai games. But it's kind of true. I mean, like, he's talking about fucking South Park. I mean, like, we live in this time where there's, like, a direct pipeline from, like, culture war horse shit straight to, like, the halls of power, straight to, like, an overreaction. And I think that, like, I don't necessarily think that is going to happen. That's just, like, but that's within the possibility space of, like, companies are fucking covering their ass real hard right now. And so it's going to take a lot more time to get them to change course again. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be like the state. Where I'm more interested in is like how this doesn't just impact like how this impacts everybody in the fucking world. You know what I mean? I have been thinking a lot about, like years ago, like months ago, I reviewed Beyond Citadel. And if you know Beyond
Mhm.
Citadel, that game's fucking good. That game is also
Yeah.
depraved. It is like, that is somebody who reads visual novels. That is somebody who is a pervert. That is a pervert. I love that guy. I love Tokimori. I follow him, and he's like, we all have that one person who we know is just gonna just flood your timeline with pornography, and that is one of them. And like, but like, that's also one, that is also like half of the game designers you like. I'm sorry, a lot of them are perverts (parentheses good) or perverts (parentheses less good), and like, that's a necessary part of like inspiration, because like a lot of that shit's really good. I mean, like, that's like the 100 line. You play the 100 line, they're constantly referencing, Durumi Yamamiya is constantly referencing, like, the Song of Saya, and like all of these like fucking visual novels that like only people who exclusively go on Discord with anime avatars play. You know what I mean? Like, this is like important information. And like, so I'm more interested in how this affects fan culture, like dojun culture in like Japan, and how it impacts like that sort of thing, and how they act. Because I feel like we've been thinking about this a little bit, like, this is just people in the West. This is just like a Western. I'm interested in how
Yeah.
it
Well, in
how
fairness, these are like Western companies.
they are, but like, it's a bigger, and it is, there's a downwind effect that happens everywhere. I guess, I don't know, is my main.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a like large and pervasive anti-porn movement that is, I would say, gaining steam. And yeah, to what extent can they kind of clamp down on the internet as a whole in their efforts to,
Australians.
make it so that certain things cannot be purchased? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm feeling like
Um,
kind of okay. I'm feeling a little optimistic long term,
Mhm.
very pessimistic short term. And optimistic long term here is, again, we go through these cycles. I think of when Lee Alexander was writing Aberrant Gamer for Game Set Watch almost 20 years
Yeah.
ago, and writing about
I
rape
loved that.
play.
I love that column.
Right, a fantastic column, and we went through a lot of these same conversations, and I don't think it's an accident that the game that is being pinned to this stir up is also a game that is dealing in, the critics would call it rape. The people who have made it, I think they're calling it intense male domination or something. I don't want to get into like the nitty gritty of where they stand, but I think what is more likely is that in the short term, you're right. If Trump talks about this, or if the conservative movement pulls this into their gears, it will be. I don't think, hey, hentai games are for pervs. I think it will be the progressives want to protect rape in games meant for your little kids. Like, that will be the story, right? It'll be the worst possible
Mhm.
version of it. And I've seen that. I've seen that in comments to some of my own stuff when I have talked about porn games, right?
Yeah.
But I think in the long term, if you look at just the cultural comfort with sex and pornography over the last 50 years, it is a series of spikes upward with tiny valleys, right? Like, we are more, it's weird. We are less comfortable with it in our mainstream entertainment, but the amount that pornography and sexuality is exposed to us is just way higher than it has ever been. And people are largely accepting of it.
You know what it is? I've been thinking about sort of political alignments. One, I have not a completely absolutist stand, because obviously there's certain things that like you should not put on. There are just things that are just like straight up crimes that you should not like in terms of content. You know what I mean? But there's like shit that I find abhorrent, like, or not personally abhorrent, but literally just like I don't want to watch that. That I think that I like. I'm pretty like absolutist about like people's kinks in certain ways. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of like oh yeah, if that's something narratively that you need personally, like that's not necessarily a moral judgment on you as a person. You know what I mean? But like, it's not the same. Like, I think that like even engaging with that shit is like kind of missing the point about like speech, because most of the time this just ends up blowing back on queer people. It, you know, like where's the line internally just
Right, of
ends up
course.
being pressure on
Yeah,
like
I mean,
another vector. I mean, not entirely. It's just like a vector of like of like it's a vector for repression a lot of the time, and a means of just
Yeah,
sort of
which is
like
the goal for a lot of the people who are like reaching out and like collective shout and things like that. Their goal is pretty clearly like repression. That's kind of where it starts, and then because I think that initially people saw all of this occur and they thought, oh, like Visa and Mastercard and PayPal and Stripe also want to participate in repression. They want a more repressed, like puritanical world. And in talking to a lot of people who are experts on this, including like one person who's writing a book about it, the impression that I took away is like, no, it's not that. It's the same old story as usual with major companies, which is they want to ensure that they can make the maximum amount of money, and anything that could potentially cause trouble is sort of what they want to avoid. And so, like in this case, yeah, one of the quotes that I got, any hassle that's going to cause them a headache or bad press or potential scrutiny from regulators, they just wash their hands of it. There are no consequences for them in shutting off accounts in the United States. They have an obligation to provide. They have no obligation to provide services to people or even an explanation when they choose to end a financial relationship, except in a very limited number of circumstances. So, like, there's no downside to these companies for being like, yeah, we're going to turn off the faucet. But there is
do
a potential downside to continue to allow stores to host these sorts of things, even if it's like not a big downside. They're just like, oh, sign of trouble. Okay, yeah, fuck that. We're out.
do you think that this is in some way inevitable with the way that regulation and self-regulation works in video games? And by that I mean we have the 80s going into the 90s. We have Custer's Revenge, we have Night Trap, we have hearings. Hey, you need to regulate. And the industry says, don't worry, we'll do it ourselves. Just trust us. And they go, okay, you make the ESRB. And the ESRB is obviously imperfect in many ways, but it like controls things. And then when there are big pushbacks against the games industry or anything that could happen like this, they can point to the ESRB and say, like, look, we have a very firm policy, yada, yada, yada. But the weird thing that happens with Steam and Itch and all these things now is the ESRB is a joke. Like, the ESRB was supposed to control how you market games and how you sell them, and like most stuff just they don't even bother rating it at this point, right? You just put it
there's
up.
too much stuff.
And on one hand, that's fantastic, and it has allowed for all of this creative freedom. On the other hand, it creates a vulnerability politically. I'm not, again, saying I'm in favor of this, but politically it makes you vulnerable because there is no regulating force that you can point to say, hey, we got this all under control. We know what we're doing here. And I saw that even when I spoke with the developer Hot Pink for the post-games episode I did on Lewd Games, is we don't know what itch.io and Steam's policies even are. The people who, before all of this, when we were publishing this, we don't know. There are things that were not going to be okay on Steam before all this happened. There are things that would not be okay on Itch before all this happened. There are lines already in the sand. But what are they? You know, it's kind of like we can just gauge what they are based off of what we see already published and what we've heard has not been published.
Right.
And I think that is probably why the game that started all this is causing this controversy, because I think it probably feels like, oh, that actually crossed whatever this invisible line is.
I think though the question is like the counter to that is the movie industry. The MPA works much differently. The MPA regulated much more differently. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily regulated better, but it's regulated more vigorously. But also, even within that, like, content being rated by the MPA isn't necessarily like the be all end all anymore. You know what I mean? Like, things that in a theatrical context, sure, things that have like releases, but like putting stuff out there that is unrated is, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it matters as much anymore, at least to me internally.
Well, I mean, to go even further down that, like, you can just download videos of porn on the internet. Like, the MPA doesn't have control of that, right? So, like, you're right.
You can now.
Yeah,
for now.
Yeah.
They're also,
but also like this.
Yeah, there are also other like legalities unfolding now around control of porn websites and pornography.
Yeah.
like one of the things that serves as kind of a precedent for what's happening with Steam and itch is what unfolded around OnlyFans in 2021 when they almost banned porn, which is a crazy thing to say that OnlyFans almost did, but it nearly happened. And then there was a massive outcry, and OnlyFans reversed the ban because they basically had gotten assurances from their banking partners that actually everything would be all right. Which again, completely wild because it seemed for a moment like this was all ironclad. Like, you know, it was just going to happen. There was no reversing it. Again, because these big companies, these like payment processors and bank companies said, okay, this is where our line is. You can't do this anymore. And then it just took like a public pressure campaign, and OnlyFans probably like, you know, pulling on some strings or whatever. But like that shows, I think, how fungible all this stuff is and how much people are still figuring it out. That, you know, somebody can make this very definitive statement and then walk it back a few days later because enough people got mad. And so that's definitely the thinking around this campaign too, is like if it worked then, it can work now. But there's also more things happening around this, like in court. Another thing that I cited in my piece is there's an ongoing case that's working its way through multiple courts around this notion of like Pornhub and by extension Visa being responsible for sex trafficking. And that case in particular is one that some of the experts that I talked to said, you know, these companies could be watching that case very closely and in the meantime behaving quite cautiously because they're worried that it's going to basically hold them accountable in instances of things like sex trafficking associated with like porn websites and porn, I guess theoretically games. I think that'd be a much harder kind of series of dots to connect. But, you know, that could account for some of this current behavior for sure. So, you know.
Something I will say though, that I think is fascinating is that like I don't want to say it's a political alignment so much as it is just a convergence of interests that you're sort of seeing with like 4chan gooners and, you know, people who are just the gayest person you know. And I think one there's like I you know what it feels like? It feels like the 90s. It feels like the 90s in that very specific way where it's like, you know, everybody was like anti-censorship. Everybody was like, fuck you. No, I get to do this. I'm an adult. If I wish to like, you know, download the game where you know, cut boys cut like teen like idol, you know, guys are up into like suitcases or whatever I do, whatever the fuck that like horrible shit that
I'm
you
gonna
would
play
see.
Postal 2 with Gary Coleman.
Literally that same kind of like penny arcade stuff, but for perverts. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is. Like there is just like there's an entire like you know category of like person now, and it's just it feels. I saw people do the like elf dwarf meme. Like I never thought I'd you know with the dwarf blah blah blah, but for like 4chan and it's just it's like then the dwarf just gives you slurs. You know, like that's it's like it feels closer to that. I don't think it's something.
Oh man, can I let you? Okay, I can give you a like perfect anecdote that characterizes this from my time reporting this story because I like hung out in one of the main discords that people have been using to organize, and somebody posted some tweets about this from Anita Sarkeesian. And one person was like, what? She's like opposed to the censorship? I thought that she'd be behind it. You know, you can guess which side of things that person was probably from.
Yeah.
And then another person was like, no, actually back in the day, all she really did was post like fairly milquetoast like criticism. She only wanted like to be able to criticize these things, not really to like change them that materially. And the other person was like, oh, I never knew that. Huh.
Yeah.
Like, you know, these people who would have been on like opposite sides of Gamergate back in the day, and now they're just like, oh,
yeah,
all right.
No,
cool.
We all kind of thought you should buy them. Some people just thought they were tacky or like crass or like not particularly progressive, but they were like, nobody was like, you shouldn't get them. That's the thing that's always bothered me about that. And I feel like everybody's kind of caught on to is just like, yeah, we all think you should be able to buy porno. Like both sides are like pro porno mostly.
I feel like the flip version of that I saw this past week was the South Park thing, which Chris, I saw your tweets about it, which are great. Which is like, yes, do I think this is the my favorite type of humor? No. Was it absolutely bizarre that my father-in-law was over? I was like making us dinner, and he was like, "Hey, you have that South Park app, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, we have an app that plays it." He's like, "Yeah. Can we can we watch that? And I was like, sure. When's the last time you watched South Park? And we all like cracked open our California weed juice cans and watched South Park together. And like, was it great? Like, I
That's
don't
not a good
know.
episode.
Like, yeah, but
It's
like,
mainly
was
just Donald
it...
Trump being gay.
Yeah, but did it feel like, oh, something's happening? Some like
Yeah.
weird convergence is happening
Yeah.
that is breaking things in weird ways.
We're back to 2008, dude. We're
Yeah,
fucking...
or back to 1999, like you
Yeah,
said. Like it
yeah.
just, I think
Fucking
of
South Park's in-
yeah, my uncle introduced me to South Park, and he's one of the biggest Trumpers people now I know. In 1999, he was like full damn the man, save the empire. And it just, I don't know, a very weird thing is happening in between the South Park shit and what is happening with the censorship thing. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a very, even if you don't care about pornography or NSFW stuff, you should keep your eye on the space because it's very interesting.
Well, a subset of that is that, like, I think those are related. I didn't want to like say like too much like there is companies being conservative, because that's the actual punchline at the end of that episode. It's probably the better part of it, because like the whole episode is like, oh, I don't fucking like, nobody likes Trump right now. Nobody likes what Trump is doing. Nobody likes what he's done. Everybody hates him right now. He's broadly unpopular. His policies are unpopular. Nobody actually wanted for this. The people who thought they voted for this didn't mean to vote for it or didn't think they were voting for it. They were like, oh, I just thought it would just get rid of all the woke stuff, blah, 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 blah. But the actual punchline at the end of the episode is, you guys need to shut the fuck up. Paramount are a bunch of fucking cowards. And like, that's the funniest joke in it. It's just Jesus being
pay
like,
the bill.
Pay the bill. Everybody just shut up. Do it. And I think that is the thing about it that like is the most prescient line in that entire episode is the thing that Steam's saying. Is like, everybody shut up. Everybody be fucking cool. We don't want to get in hot water. And like, that's the impulse is actually weirdly similar. Is like, nobody likes this, but everybody who works at a company is like, they have a gun to our head. Like,
yeah.
Yeah,
I just
but
picture
again,
that National
I think that the
Lampoon
thing-
magazine.
Yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind, though, is that, you know, as the OnlyFans situation a few years ago proved, like, the gun to the head analogy is maybe not that apt, because things can change, like, and they can change pretty quickly just based on public opinion. Like, nothing here is, like, necessarily, you know, illegal or necessarily, you know, has to be censored or shut down. Like, again, one of the people that I talked to, you know, compared it to, they said, like, okay, if you look at some of the porn games that are from Steam, probably what's happening there is that the companies working in the background are saying, okay, let's get this more in line with like what would be allowable on an actual porn site. So anything that goes beyond, that crosses these lines of what could be considered legal, let's remove that.
Yes,
which of course can be a slippery slope to other stuff. But then this person who's not even a gamer was like, however, you're also not allowed to shoot people in porn, but you can shoot people in all sorts of video games, and that's fine. And so like this immediately gets kind of wonky. And again, just goes back to this notion that people are still trying to figure things out, and they're just sort of trying stuff.
Fictionally, though, I think you could. Like, the thing is,
that's what I mean.
fiction.
But I mean, video games are fictional.
No, I mean, like,
exactly.
fictional
like
pornography. Like, I've seen some really depraved... I mean, I don't know. I'm, like, thinking, like...
Yeah, but that's still acting. You're not literally killing somebody.
Well, you're not literally killing somebody in the game either.
The
it's fiction. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
I
sorry,
know.
metaphysical. That's coherent.
Yes, I think I know what you mean. Beyond Citadel would not...
pornography.
Yes, exactly. Beyond Citadel is
legal. Like, there's nothing... Yeah, like all this stuff is legal, and so these companies are not necessarily beholden by the government to force storefronts like Steam and itch to change their ways. That's not the mechanism that's being pulled on. Instead, the mechanism that's being pulled on is the potential for like regulatory scrutiny down the line, and in the meantime, public blowback with, you know, collective shatter, whoever, making themselves appear bigger than they are. So that is all to say that, like, I think the gun to your head analogy is a little bit too severe. There's not really a gun to your head. You can actually walk this back.
No. I mean, this is where like gaming and like CBS Paramount Plus is different, because there is a gun to CBS's head, or like there is a much more aggressive direct intervention. I'm not saying that will happen in games. I'm just saying I could see it happening like tomorrow. I could see somebody... they're playing
Right.
Sayanuta, like just like fucking. There's a girl. She's blue. The Bible is black. We're learning all sorts of things. I was shown a cartoon. Like I could see him doing all of this, like shit, because that's how dumb the world we live in is right now. It's just how fucking
Yeah.
evil and
Well,
weird and
and
wonky,
so
and how he's like connected himself to these like people who are part of that weird pipeline. But like, yes,
uh,
gaming, it can be rolled back. It's closer to the OnlyFans situation, I
yeah.
think.
Well, there's also like, I think Naomi Clark, who I talked to, also made some really good points about just how many things are up in the air right now.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you talk about that and how something could change suddenly, and then also like we've had different approaches taken to these same issues, in terms of adult content on Tumblr, on OnlyFans, now Pornhub potentially, and then like Sesta and Fosta exist and could theoretically
Mm-hmm.
be stretched to prohibit fiction. We've not seen that yet, but it certainly could happen. And so, what she said, or how she concluded her thought, which I think is very prescient, is she said, "We are in a time of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, even for top risk management, compliance, and legal executives in corporate settings. There's been a lot of, we'll just ignore this as long as we can, as long as we can look the other way, and collective shout pierce that bubble. But I don't think that even the people at the top have a clear idea of what the safe or sensible thing to do
Yeah.
is."
Yeah.
Which again is why they're just like being super cautious and afraid, because they are afraid.
We are.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
The
again, Trump being in office does not help that.
only unifying thing is like ass covering right now, and anger.
Hmm.
Like corporate ass
Yeah.
covering and populist anger, I think, are the two things, and like just sort of crassness among the people who, the sort of minority of people who are in power, in little small places of power.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Well, yeah. Let's see. On that note, let's briefly, because Chris, I want to give you ample floor space to talk about Death Stranding too,
games are
but
good.
I did want to like quickly touch on the Nintendo Direct just because it happened, and I feel if nothing else obligated to mention Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
How did they say it? Yeah, Philadelphia.
Dude, why is that not? Is that post up
um,
on the? Do we have a post for that on the site? Because I fucking love Philadelphia.
no, we really should one that's just. We should have one that's headlined just Philadelphia, and that's it.
Okay,
Maybe it says the word again in the body text.
Philadelphia.
Buildia, that's right. Okay, Philadelphia.
Philabieldia. Everybody I know
Yeah.
who's from Philly or likes Philly was like, go birds with umlauts, like. Also, what's the game called? Elliot? The Tales of Elliot?
Yeah, Elliot. Yeah, Tales of Elliot. The something like year or yeah. But yeah, it's like for those who didn't watch today's direct, it is a like HD 2D RPG, so it sort of looks like what Octopath and games like that. But it is set in a city that, well, we just said the name repeatedly. Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales. There we go. That's what it's called. That is its full name.
It looks like an action RPG, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it looks perfectly fine, even like kind of nice. Like I think a lot of people are gonna, give it a shot at least. I'd be interested to play it, but
Demo's out.
it's just like who? Yeah, there's a demo. Who picked that name though, and why did they
Dude,
do it?
It's so cool.
Like,
I love their.
what are they going for?
I love whoever the fuck is at Square who just picks the names out of a hat is like my favorite person.
Uh-huh.
They're like up there with like the person at the New York Times who just does all the covers. It's just like one old man who's just kind of confused, who's like really into wordplay, like sort of. He's just like, we call it Octopath Traveler. Yeah, there's 8 of them.
Do you feel like localizers are like keenly aware of the power they have to create discourse and memes? Like after Yakuza Like a Dragon became this series where you can screen cap every single subtitle in that game because it's gonna spread and represent like a "this is me" thing on Twitter. They're like, yes,
Right.
I know exactly Philadelphia or whatever. This is gonna be cat fodder.
Philabieldia, which makes it sound like it's a like Minecraft subcontinent. Like come to Philabieldia, where you can hang out with your good friends Jack Black and Jason Momoa. But yeah, I think they probably do. To answer your question, at least some of them. I think savvier localizers for sure. Like, by the way, if we like isolate this element of what we localized in the trailer, people are gonna lose their shit. It's the same way with like when they were like dribbling out information about Donkey Kong Bonanza and sort of like giving people lore about that world. Like, wait, that's how things work in Donkey Kong Land? Like, all these little bits of weirdness, I think, add up to a great kind of marketing plan, if you can make that happen. So I'm sure that they have awareness by now because they've been doing directs for like a decade. They know what people react to. They know what is catnip to them.
Does the game have word or magic? That's what I need to know. Does it have word or magic? Can you buy? Is there? They just have to put a Wawa in it now. I'm sorry, we have to start to tell any Japanese game development studio what they got to do. But if there's not a Wawa in there, if I can't at least buy some manner of hoagie, then I don't. Then they're gonna have like strongly worded letters with batteries in them, and sent to their way. It's just like. Somebody was joking that the battle menu is just John. Just like just all your whole inventory. I will say that's they should lean into that, but not so much that it's annoying or too cute. But also, can we talk about Campfire the game?
Right. That's another weird one. They revealed a game where it's just like you and your friends sitting around a campfire using the Switch 2's kind of like camera functionality.
It is,
and you just got to like level up your campfire. It's called Chilling by the Fire. That's
Chilling
it.
by the
Like
Fire.
It's one of those rare games where the title completely sums it up. You don't need to know anything else.
It's basically, someone described it as VR chat for straight guys who want to sit around and name baseball players instead of doing furry anime stuff. It is just
so the entire staff of Defector.
Yeah, basically we should just get the Defector staff all to buy Switches and like play this because it's basically
that's a
just
great stream idea. Actually, we should keep this one in our back pocket.
It is literally just like it's just a campfire that you just like it's just being around a campfire and like making sure the campfire keeps going, and then you can plug a USB camera into it and your faces will just appear above the campfire like big circles, and it's just it's
kind of freaky.
Everyone was like, what the fuck is this game? And then immediately I thought about it for 2 seconds. I was like, this might be the greatest game I've ever seen. You have so like, specifically nailed a tone of straight guys.
Right. Well, no, there's that one tweet where somebody's like, I really appreciate that one white guy who's always like at a campfire, who like, if you're at a campfire, he's always like adjusting the logs and everything.
Yeah.
It's like somebody saw that tweet and they're like making a game for him.
Dude, okay. Can I tell you, very quick side tangent. I am that because I own a Pudgy Pie maker. Do you know what a Pudgy Pie maker is, real quick?
No.
Oh, you should get a Pudgy Pie maker. If you are adjacent to a campfire more than twice a year, get a Pudgy Pie maker. It is also called a pie iron. It is, or if you are Indian, Joffle pie, or South. It's like hobo culture from the 1930s. South African culture, and then like Indian street food all converge on a thing that's just two big clamps of iron, and you put bread on one side and then you put stuff in the other, and then you put bread on the other side and you clamp it closed and you shove it into a fire and you make a hot pocket. It is one of my favorite things. And if you are near a fire that is not necessarily yours or is yours, having one of those, you are a god. You just I go to a festival once a year and I bring that, and occasionally I'll just make one. And I've had people the next day, because they're usually high, come up to me and be like, "You that was one of the most important things that a person has ever done to me." Like just giving me like a s'mores hot pocket when I was like coming down.
Okay, so if we're gonna mention other direct games, because I do want to touch on one more. Otherwise, I think it was kind of a boring showcase. But they announced a game called Hella that's like a little open world where you're all mice and you just run around and like climb big objects covered in vegetation, or ride like a moose or something, or like maybe was that a dog? No, a moose. Yeah, and it's just like. I think that every game that takes place in a normal sized world, but you're tiny, should be commended. I mean, Grounded 2 like just came out. But there still are not enough of those. And this one looks really good and really fun. It looks like what did we decide on instead of friend slop? What's the correct genre term for it? It looks like one of those, but just like a chill little game where you're running around with your mouse buddies. Yeah, you gotta respect that.
I like a big open world that is you being tiny inside a realistically sized world where it actually still
Hmm.
feels like a realistic world. Like I ground the games are solid, but it kind of feels like you go into a theme park styled after tiny stuff. Like if you it's the difference between
Mm.
Honey I Shrunk the Kids the movie and Honey I Shrunk the Kids the theme park experience. And this looks more like, yes, you are actually in a giant backyard and you are a little mouse,
Well, it's
which
grounded.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, it does look grounded.
But yeah, so I wanted to give a shout out to that one because I didn't see a ton of people mentioning it in isolation. I just saw it in
There's a,
roundups and I was like, wait, this looks sick though?
also the
Yeah.
I will say, yeah, new Katamari, but more importantly, look at the fucking music list for that Katamari. That is one of the most stacked soundtracks. Like it's like real heads know shit. You know what I mean? Like they got some really nice people on that new Katamari game. Yeah, you go, and also was it Octopath Zero was pretty good. There was like a lot of like, hey, here's some stuff that you probably should have played already, but now it's on the Switch, like Kiwami 1 and 2. Uh, there's a bunch of stuff like that. And it was a nice little surprise. Mostly whatever, but it was just
Yeah.
it was just like,
I
hey,
mean,
here's some other stuff
it's
you might
like,
like. Final Fantasy Tactics,
yeah,
you
it's
probably should play that
continuing
on
the
the
kind
Switch
of like,
too.
yeah, it's continuing like Nintendo's, slow drip, slow feed or whatever process of just like, instead of doing a bunch of games out the gate for Switch 2, they're keeping people engaged over time. I think that there's been a like lull or quote unquote finger quotes lull in first party stuff. I mean, we got Mario Kart and Donkey Kong already. Most people probably haven't finished either one of those games, so I think it's fine. But I think that the like online commentary, it was like there weren't any major Nintendo games, and like now we're in a post-release lull and nothing's happening, and it's
It's
like
called
I don't think that's how normal people think
it's
about their consoles.
called a console
But
release. That happens
whatever.
basically every single time. It's basically since I was a child. It
Right.
has kind of been like, it's very rare to like. I guess maybe the Dreamcast had more gusto. Maybe I'm misremembering shit. I'm trying to remember of like something where there was like a lot of games first party. Like,
Yeah, I mean, Dreamcast has to be it,
Well,
right?
even
Like,
then,
is that.
I feel like
Yeah,
and you kind of wish they spaced that out a little bit more, all things
yeah,
considered,
that's a good
because
point. Yeah.
everyone's just like, hey,
yeah,
yeah, look at all
yeah.
these games. I'm done. All
Wow.
right.
And they all fit on this one burnt disc.
They
How
all hit
cool.
on one DVD or GD-ROM or whatever.
All right. Now we've cleared the way, and then we've talked about every other topic. Chris, tell us about or what do you think about Death Stranding 2 now that you've finished it? I don't want you to like spoil the ending, obviously, but you made it to the end.
Hmm.
How are you feeling about it compared to where you
Uh, I fucking love that game. That game rocks. I was not expecting to really love it. I think that game's phenomenal. I fucking hate gassing up Kojima any more than he already has been. But man, he fucking did it. He made a fucking good ass game. Yeah. It took me 95 hours to beat. Everybody who reviewed it was like, I played it in 35 to 38 hours and I wanted to die. And I'm like, that sucks. I'm glad I didn't have to do that. No offense. Seems like the wrong way to play these games. It seemed and this is I was under embargo for the first one, so I know what that's like, and I'm glad I just let it hang
Mhm.
out. I'm glad I let it sit with me. I think it's paced for that. Um, I think that okay, it's really fun. I think that that's important. I know that seems like an anodyne thing to say, but I think that everybody look. I'm writing about this piece being at it right now, but basically every once in a while, Kojima will get the Lathe of Heaven. He is given the Lathe of Heaven, and he accidentally predicts something. In the case of Metal Gear Solid 2, it was 9/11, which he made it. He released roughly around September 11th or so, and then the game came out, and then 9/11 happened, and they had to change the game. You know, or though it's not his game, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance ended up predicting Make America Great Again. Not his game in like the sense that he wasn't the right. It's not really his game. You know what I mean? Let's be real. But it's a continuation of 4. And I think that like, I mean, like even when this game was announced, it's very strange because you play this game and he just kind of announced it. He just kind of dropped it. I don't know if people remember this. It was just like, are they making another one of these? And then he was like, yeah, I'm making another one of these. And it wasn't like he had like Joachim Morgan or come out as a mummy. He didn't like make a fake game to put the trailer for the real game in. He just was like, hey, I like that game. Let's make another one. By the way, I had to rewrite it because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And like, the thing about Death Stranding 2 is that it is very clearly about COVID. It is extremely about COVID. That is not a spoiler because he said so like multiple times. And part of that is that, and I get a little bit into this piece, like you can't. Everybody associates Death Stranding, the first game, with COVID because he was so like accidentally correct. Like he hit on it so correctly. And I think that the reticence that a lot of people had going into this one is, oh, is it gonna be like annoying? Is it gonna be like an annoying game that's difficult to play? That's sort of like kind of a bore. And his impulse this time is like, no, fun only. Singing in the rain. We're gonna fucking, like do raindrops keep falling on my head. We're gonna fucking, you're gonna have a cool cast. You're all gonna be together. You're all gonna be inhabiting the same space. It's gonna be fun to actually do combat. And like, that is what the game is about. The game is about being in a place with people, with friends, with family, and like getting over how badly we all got fucked up by COVID. And I think that like, outside of like Eddington, I guess, which I have yet to see, but which I know the broad strokes of, I don't think anybody's actually done something to that scale about that experience. You know what I mean? And like the way that he's doing it is the correct one, which is he's making a game that's broadly fun to play. It's a blast. It's fucking great. Troy Baker rocks. Have you played any of this game? Because Troy Baker's fucking great in it. I hate Troy Baker in the first game. I really do not like Higgs in the first game. Higgs sucks to be around. He's annoying. And in the second game, they turned him into that one drill tweet about having to take off your V for Vendetta mask and you have Joker makeup under it. They lean into that shit so heavily. I think Ian was the one who pointed that. They lean into that shit so heavily. It's such a good impulse. It's like the whole thing is scenery chewing. I think it's like, it's lumpy and strange in the way that Kojima games often are lumpy and strange, but like I don't think that a game has like correctly pointed out how everybody's fucked up now. We are all fucking damaged goods now because of the way that we interact with the world, and like how do you heal from that? And that is the game that he made, and I think he did a great fucking job. And the last 4 hours of that game are a blast. They are just like pure like serotonin jumping in my head. I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
The phrase Lynchian gets misused all the time because Lynchian tends to mean it looks like Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Kojima has a real kinship with how David Lynch created. And that isn't to say that Death Stranding is like those things. But Lynch talked at length about this idea of allowing yourself to dive deeper and deeper into your subconscious and just grab whatever you could fit in your hands. And then as you got pulled back up to the surface, you just brought them with you. And like, you can't organize that. You can't make sense of it. You're just grabbing literally whatever you can. And it will make sense when it gets to the surface in some way or not. It's not going to be coherent. It's not going to be clean. It's not going to be structural. But if you start to, amass this collection of ideas and feelings and emotions and visuals, and you put them all together, there will be naturally, if you trust the process, a logic to it, a connection to it. And I think that I'm disappointed when I see people really bash this game. And this is these are people on YouTube who, make an entire living off of bashing games and doing, it doesn't make sense. But it seems like it seems disingenuous to go at this game expecting it to be a structure that it just simply isn't. That it just is not chasing. Whether that is if like you're like, why does it do all this silly shit, or why does the story not make sense? Or, and I've seen this from some other people, why is it not making a really clear statement? Like it's just not in that business.
Yeah.
It is in the business of giving you all of these like kind of dirty emotional relics and putting them in front of you and saying, what do you see? And in like Chris, in your case, that is this is a game about recovery and a group dynamic from the pandemic. And I think that's like a beautiful reading. It's not the one that I had gotten. But the second you say it, I'm like, oh, I can definitely see that in those parts.
Higgs specifically. There's a line in it where I think Fragile at one point, I won't say what the context of this, but like Fragile at one point says to him, "You're damaged goods." And the line that he comes back with, and he repeats repeatedly, is, "I'll take the damage and the goods. I don't break that easy." And he keeps repeating it over and over in increasing intensity. "I'll take the damage and the goods. I don't break that easy. I'll take the damage and the goods. I don't break that easy." And he's doing it ironically, because he is a man who has broken. And later at one point, the line that just like stunned me. And this is a sort of like subtext. This is the water. This is the well. You know, this is Lynchian in that sense.
I was gonna say that's like some real Lynchian shit.
Is
that's in it.
Is he gives a speech later on that I think is probably like I fucking Troy Baker, between this and Indiana Jones, goddamn man, I went from like whatever, you know, he's a guy, to being like I fucking love this guy. Is him saying to Sam, "You of all people should understand the loneliness, the isolation," and I mean, I'm sorry, like that's the read, you know what I mean? Like this is a game, like think of just like the way that I mean, to sort of dance around a little bit, like think about the ways in which like kids got fucked up by the pandemic. Like think about the ways that like kids just don't have a normal childhood now because of the fucking pandemic. And like that's in there. Like I'm sorry, that is just straight up in there. And like the ways that like people like, you know, people go back to work without having to assess what was broken in them. Like there was never a reckoning for the thing that you went through. Or even just like the top line, like the United States is a cancer. Like that game is straight up saying like the United States is not good. The companies that are associated with the United States are not good. How they interact with each other is explicitly breeds violence. I'm sorry, there's a fucking, I don't know how, this is one of a does he know meme, but like there's a fucking like organization called APAC in the game, and it makes you wonder like, you know, how intentional is that, you know, like and it's like I you know, I don't expect total coherence from it, but like the things that it's saying strike me as introspective more so than the games that he has made before. Because in the games that he has made before, he's like, this is where the present's about, and here's what the future is going to be. And when he announced it at TGS, if you go back and watch that, he's kind of says, I don't want to predict anything anymore. And I think that that's kind of the tone, is like, this is him looking back. And this is him looking back at his career and sometimes doing kind of like a jack off motion and a look, well, yeah, it's Solid Snake, man, you know, like Viking Marina, like, yeah, you know, it's just like, it's him having a joke, you know, it's him mugging at the camera, and it's silly, but like, I don't know, or like even just like tonally, like Doll Man, like you look at Doll Man and you're like, what the fuck is Doll Man's deal? For people who don't know, Doll Man is a little doll who's your friend. And he gives the same exposition you'd normally get in a codex call, which is to say really obvious top-line exposition. And he is animated in such a way as to make it look like he is doing stop-motion animation. And it's initially just horrendous to look at. And then you spend some time with him, and he's the fucking, I love him so much. I love him like a child, like a friend, like a lover. I love Doll Man so much. He's great, especially when you figure out that you can throw him in the air and he goes wee, yes. and then you use him as a spy camera to identify for, like, he's a scout. There's a moment in the game where if you have Doll Man, like you have Doll Man on your strap and he'll be like, Sam, blah, 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 you know, something like that. If you walk into a river as you're doing that, he will go, Sam, blah, 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 and like, there's just like, it's so fucking funny, man. Like, this game is so fucking funny. I mean, like, and that's the thing. That impulse has always been there in Kojima's shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's always been at either sometimes at the margins and a little bit first. And this time he kind of made it the meal. And I think that's the right call. Because even if you top line didn't understand, like, even if you didn't, like, associate, like, consciously the game with COVID, you associated it with the feeling of COVID. The first game was like punishing in certain ways, and this game is at other times, like when you hit the mountain. But for the most part, it's like kind of a cozy game. It's kind of like a breezy, like, I'm just gonna ride down the road. Oh, look, turn on autopilot, play a little bit of music, you know, play a little low roar, you know, just like, and like that feels really good, and it feels like in the piece I sort of bring up this. It reminds me of like when clubs opened up again and how people went from playing like dire Berghain style techno to just like everything sounds like a Toonami ad break now. It's just break beats. We're playing jungle. We're playing trance and jungle again. We're gonna have fun. You need to be in the same physical space with people. That is how you get over this. That is how you heal. And like, I think he's the only person to like recognize the damage and give kind of a solution, even if it's like Lynchian and metaphorical and broad and vibesy.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, something else.
Also, there's a coffin.
Extremely vibesy.
Skateboard coffin.
These Moby Dick style
that is
coffin.
sick.
It's a surfboard that's a coffin, and it rocks. It's surprisingly useful for going up a mountain.
That's what I'm always saying about surfboard coffins. I'm like, you'll never believe it, but this actually goes up a mountain real nice. Let's see. Speaking of something that was for sure lugged over a mountain to get here, brought by a dedicated porter of sorts. Let's hit up the mailbag and answer reader questions. By the way, I always mean to say this before we do the mailbag, but if you would like to contribute to the mailbag, you can do so by subscribing to our member tier, which costs $10 per month. That will grant you access to our Discord, where we collect questions, and also people just have really good discussions. It's a great time. You should do it. It'll be the best $10 a month that you spend in your entire life, guaranteed. If that doesn't come true, you can find me and beat me up or whatever. Anyway, from Treethan, who's also in chat right now. What do you think? What do you all think of Atari acquiring majority shares of Thunderful? I find it fascinating what Wade Rosen is doing as the CEO there. I'm curious of what everyone thinks of Atari at this point overall. Bringing back Infogrames, man, I never know how to pronounce that company because it looks so funky. Purchasing Night Dive and Digital Eclipse have all been really interesting moves. So yeah, what do we think of Atari as it currently exists?
I mean, you go ahead.
No, I mean, like my okay. So my opinion of Atari is sort of colored by the fact that like they were kind of a New York presence in a really weird way for like years, and they were always kind of a fucking mess. Like they were just strange. They were just a strange company. You never knew where they fit in. I think they were like right down the street from Rockstar. They were like near the one Best Buy near the Bowery, if I remember correctly. But maybe I'm misremembering, and they were just on 23rd or something. And so it's really hard for me to mentally. I'm sorry to say, like it's really hard for me to mentally get over that. In the same way that's hard for me to conceptualize like modern what Konami is now. You know what I mean? It's like, you guys are always going to be the guys who like put the DDR people in the gym.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of feelings about this. I'll do a plug here now because that's what I'm supposed to do. But I did an entire interview with Wade Rosen for Post Games that also includes a pretty detailed history of not just the early days, but these almost 4 decades in the desert that Chris is referring to. I remember distinctly going to a demo early in my career. So this is like right around the financial collapse in 2008 or so, and going to that office and going into a demo and then coming out and people had already filled their desks into boxes because they had been laid off while I was in the demo. So like that is what I mean by yes. There's a specific type of Atari that is very hard to dislodge from my brain. But the thing to remember with Atari is it is a word, basically.
Yeah.
It is a series of rights that you can sell. It is a logo. And what I think is, I mean, personally, I find it quite exciting that Wade Rosen is doing with it is what if Atari just means retro games?
Yeah.
So, like, when people say Atari in the same way that, like, Kleenex or Coke, you think of a certain thing. So, he's not just, going and gobbling up all the Atari IP that they had lost over the year because most of the original stuff just got sold off piecemeal. But then also going and buying up all these other things that you can just switch retro and Atari and it can mean the same thing. And I think that's a smart idea, especially if the bet is young people are going to see games the way that people see sports, which is like there's the NFL, the MLB, and maybe MLS. There's these three big brands. There's Fortnite, there's Call of Duty, there's Grand Theft Auto, and then everything else is hobbyist. If you think that's the future, owning retro is going to be a smart business move because retro is a thing. It is a concept. It is viable. It has been proven that there are increasing number of people our age and older who are willing to spend larger and larger sums of money around that space. So I think it's interesting. It feels like we're like in year 2 or 3 of a 10-year plan, I think, with like whatever the hell they're doing. It feels very early, but it's just wild to see anybody in the game space have what feels like a pretty like a 10-year plan. Like they're like
it's about to
making
say,
steps
like 10
towards
years in
something.
video games. Most people have like a quarterly plan or
Right?
like an
It's
annual
weird,
plan. But yeah, 10 years, it's crazy.
I think
But you look at it and you see Digital Eclipse and you see this move. All of it feels like it was planned. It doesn't feel coincidental. But anyway, sorry, Chris. I'll throw it back to you.
No. I think that I think a lot of Western companies, I think some Japanese companies do seem to have like longer term plans. Like, I don't know, Capcom seems to have its shit together, kind of. You know what I mean? Like, basically, like, who used to kind of not own this was like Namco. Namco used to be like really good on this, and this is mainly just me being like, I wish like Pac-Man CE was still an active series because that's like fucking so good. I love Pac-Man CE so much. But that used to be kind of their bread and butter of like, here's the goofy fun stuff that's like kind of hypey for other stuff. And Konami sort of did that too, you know what I mean? But it was internally. But like the idea of like owning a genre of, not even just a genre, but like a category of genres is very smart, I think, yeah.
And I'm curious if we will see them start to partner with those other brands for their stuff. Like, the big question I have is, will Microsoft just give them the Activision IP from back in the day for cheap or license it for cheap because it's beneficial towards Microsoft in the long run? So use Atari to do a whole bunch of Pitfall and shit like that. And then you still retain the rights to it, and you're going to make your Pitfall game once somebody else has done the busy work of making your IP, mildly relevant again. I don't know, but there's a lot of companies with a lot of old IP that don't want to do the busy work of making them important, but they would like them to be important so they could make bigger projects.
Can I tell you exactly who I'm thinking of?
Please.
Electronic Arts. They don't want to do shit with shit. They don't want to do anything that is not sports and sports-related content and maybe a couple of other things, but they would love some of their assets to be worth more money.
Okay, can I tell you my fantasy?
Yeah.
This is my how not to make a lot of money, but to stabilize your business if you're Electronic Arts to buy you the 3 years that you're going to need to figure out whatever your change is.
Mm-hmm.
Complete bullshit. They should not actually do this, but what I would do, what I would want. Get .emu, that publisher, that did Streets of Rage 4, that just put
Yeah.
out Ninja
Yeah.
Gaiden, and all it does is revive IP and install them into a like large portion of Electronic Arts and say, we want 20 IP turned into games over the next 4 years. And you can work with whoever you want, contract it all out. It won't be internal studios. And just make people know what Crusader No Remorse is. Again, make people know what, well, I don't know how you make Desert Strike without making it just wildly xenophobic. But all these other games that you have, go out there and make them and revive these properties. Resuscitate this huge IP portfolio that we have that we've neglected for so long that it has diminished to 4 games. It's insane how big some of these portfolios are. And that then you look at the way that they treat them and you would think that they only have 3 games.
But you know who's really good at that is Tango Project. You know Tango Project?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's Natsume Atari.
That would be.
They're mainly doing with their own stuff, but I'm really curious what they end up doing next because like everything they do is fucking perfect. Pocky Rocky, Reshrined, like Ninja Saviors, Return of the Warriors. Like every game they do is like a master. You could teach a fucking course just on them.
Those are it's such a great example, and I think their games get overlooked because they are not as familiar as the stuff that Dotemu is doing. They're not doing Streets of Rage,
I know.
Those are incredible games.
I bang a pots and pans every time they have a new game out, like every single time. Like it's so everything. Like I every time I do, I'm just like, you guys gotta fucking play new Tango Project came out. You gotta fucking play. It's really good. Yeah, my article is just called Tango Project is a Miracle. Like that was literally the last thing I posted about them because they're fucking great. Yeah, Shadow the Ninja Reborn is so good. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Next question from Bullion. On a recent episode of the Indie Council podcast, they're talking about AI use in games. One, because this is a two-parter, do you play games that make use of AI? And two, a question that was asked by Janet Garcia, MinMax. If you're enjoying a game and are halfway through the game, but it comes out that the game used AI, for example, the alters, do you still play the game or would you drop it? I can answer these real quick. One, no. Two, it's entirely hypothetical because it has not happened to me. But probably, yeah. I'd probably drop it, I would guess. It depends on the game, maybe. And also, like, the circumstances, because with some of those games that use AI, they've been like, oh, that was, like, a placeholder. That was, like, not a thing that we knew was in there. Or, like, hypothetically, if there's a person who, like, one person on the team that used it and the rest of the team was like, we don't approve of this, fuck that, we took it out of the game, then I'd be like, okay, that's probably allowable. But yeah, I think that otherwise I have a pretty hardline stance on this. Like if a game has AI in it and I know about it up front, nah, fuck that.
Here's the thing. I think that like you get into that like calling everything AI was a mistake, more top line more than everything.
Yes,
Problem,
like the New York Times.
Like the New York Times came out. But also, if you actually read that article, which I did, unfortunately, the game that I'm not even gonna call it a game. The weird tech demo that costs like $1,000 just to run every day, that the company they suggested make was basically just facade, but it was the size of a city and worse.
That's okay.
We just keep doing facade again.
Games with AI in them. I played them as demos at GDC. I wrote a whole article about this for not this year's GDC, but last year's. And yeah, that's all any of them are. It's like AI NPCs, right? So like NPCs that you can ask pretty much anything to, and they'll reply with like semi-natural language. But it's not really like conducive to anything beyond messing with said NPCs, getting them to like say things or break script or whatever, because they are so limited in what they can do. And ultimately, like, and this is banal to say, or like it's maybe even dated, but like games are about, like verbs, right? About the things that you do, the actions you perform, the game mechanic loops that you find yourself in that are satisfying to perform. And like AI NPCs exist largely outside of that. And when they start to exist inside of that, then you're just using a normal NPC because you ultimately still have to script them to perform certain actions based on player inputs. So it's like, yeah, they're fun in the facade sense of like, you mess with this for a little while, you get them to say funny things, and then after 15 or 20 minutes, you're done.
Also, I'll let Chris let you go in a second, but I was just going to say, like, also, like, the one I probably played the most was the finals. And that was literally A,
Mm.
pretty early on in people being mad at AI. I will say that was like real borderline. B, they did like pay the. It was. I'm not going to justify it, but there was like at the time that was like real closer to the edge, I think, than people give it credit for. But it's also not the thing that's fun about that game. The thing that's fun about that game is it's like ex Dice employees, and they made a big thing with collapsible environments that's really sick. And then everything else, occasionally you just get these barks that are just like sound incorrect, and it's just like Smash TV, LLM Smash TV shit happening in the background, and it's just like. But the game's fun. It's like that's probably the one I played the most, and now it just bums me out to play.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the challenge I have with answering a question like that, I wish I had like an easy answer, is what do we mean by AI? And Chris, you said that too earlier of when we call everything that, and what applications do we mean? Um, I talked with Frank Lance a while ago, and like his point is people care a lot about AI when it's art and writing because people either want to do those jobs or find that they find those jobs for the people who do them attractive. But when people spend, 5 or 6 years using AI to do coding, there's not a lot of like complaints, and it's also invisible. Like
Yeah.
I think a real question I have is how many games over the last 6 to 7 years have had AI as part of the development cycle on those parts, on the invisible parts, on the parts that are not going to show up in a screenshot for the alters, right? So I think that's the tough part, and it's honestly just the thing that I'm like really wrestling with. Like I don't know what to make about my feelings of that because obviously as a creator I am really sensitive when I see bad AI writing, or I am very sensitive when I see AI art. And yet, yeah, I'm totally guilty of like not thinking what other parts of the system are being part of that, and where is it helpful and where is it not. I don't know how coding works, so I can't speak to it. So I think that I have like I can answer it quite easily when it's like was the writing done, the bulk of the writing that you see done AI, are they using AI generated NPCs? Yeah, I would avoid the shit out of it. Also, partly because I think it sounds nefarious, and partly because I think it sounds like shit.
It sounds bad. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
That's
Like
the
that's the thing.
finals
But
thing.
then, like, I think you're catching me on a kind of a funky day in that. Did either of you see that the music video for the Bad Seeds song that I think Nick Cave may have put out or somebody? But like this
Mhm.
Australian director who did Blonde and some other movies, and I
Oh.
think Nick Cave a like video for the song Tupelo, and it's like about Elvis, and it's an AI video, and there's like unquestionably some artistry to it. Like I personally, I think like you look at it and you're like, there is something happening here. Do I, as a human, still think that's okay? I don't know. Like, one, like, what does it mean? Like, that was a fan project, but it takes people's work. I don't know. But does the
Mhm.
damage that does to the environment? How do I feel about that? That's where it gets messy. There's like still all these
Yeah.
other messinesses
I
around
mean,
it, but I don't know. I
I
just
guess it's
feel
just
like
like the way to
it's
draw the
so
line
fucking
pretty
messy.
easily is there artistry in it? Maybe, but also you could just make art through all the other means that we've amassed over the course of human history with your own hands and abilities. You don't need to. And so when the thing itself does damage, as you're saying, like to the environment, potentially to the field of art itself, then like no, there's just not a good reason to use it. It can never outweigh that damage, so don't do it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's pretty fair.
I'm gonna disagree
Hmm.
and say this looks really bad.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this is not this just yeah, particularly because there's a shot in this that I saw almost immediately and I'm like, "Oh, that's horrible," because it's Elvis in the back of a car and the car's going the wrong way.
Oh, 100%. Well, I would say watch the thing. I think that is intentional. But I think part of what I find appealing about this video, again, I'm not even sure like appealing is the right word. I think there's an uncanniness that is interesting when I see it sometimes. But again, that's different. I think
But
I'm
it just
also just one of those people who tends to be like a little bit more like I'm always. Can I tell you like my
yeah,
fear actually with actually what
sure.
you just said, Nathan? And this isn't that I
Mhm.
disagree with you. but it's where in 5 or 10 years from now, if it does not do environmental harm, where do you think people will be at?
I mean, I think even without the environmental harm, you just look at, all and I have not interacted with people who use AI much. I am fortunate to surround myself with people who
Yeah.
largely abhor it. But, you see all the articles about people using it a ton in school, about younger people like leaning on it. And I don't know how much of that is accurate as a matter of scale. A lot of studies and things like that are, of course, being funded by AI companies or companies that want AI to
Yeah.
take off. So it's hard to get a holistic sense of actually how much it's being used in people's day-to-day lives. But, if you take that at face value, then it already has infiltrated a lot of areas of like society or of people's lives. And it's like, we might be on that track already.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, I agree with that. I also think it's funny the thing that you said of like these things are largely funded by the AI companies, and I think that's true. And yet the results are like almost always bad. Like it's like this
uh-huh,
study funded by ChatGPT, and it's like, well, this is the worst results possible, and it was funded by them. Like if this is what you're
uh-huh.
seeing, and I can
Yeah.
only speak anecdotally, but I live on a college campus at UCI and am friends with a lot of teachers, and anecdotally, what I hear is horrifying. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, truly terrifying. Again, like I said, I feel weird. Like I don't know why I'm like kind of like picking at this. Mostly, I guess I just find it interesting. But I think these sorts of questions are. I find this just a really compelling. Uh, I find this to be a really interesting thing to talk about because it does seem so messy and murky. Because exactly what you said, and I mean, you could have just left it at that, Chris. Everything is being AI for so many different purposes, whether it's historical use of the term, whether it is every tech company wanting to call themselves AI because it's the only way they can get funded. And it is creating
Mm-hmm.
this like really, really shittiness in terms of how we know what we should or shouldn't use, what we should or shouldn't fight for. And I think it's honestly to the AI companies' advantage in a weird way that it is
Oh yeah,
messy.
no, it's
And
marketing.
that I
The
find
fact
very
that all
Well,
of these things are
frustrating.
conflated is absolutely like that's the savviest thing they did is call this AI
Yeah.
because it's
they
not this has been all to
there's a
say, but
shot in
like it's
this.
not AI, it's not intelligent, it
Sorry,
has no such capabilities,
there's
but
a
they have
shot in
found a
this of
way
a
to make people
guy
believe that.
clipping through a wood. Like he grabs. I hate even talking about this. There's a shot of the guy with like a bindle on his back, and he's like trying to like rush past this like wood like plank barrier, and he clips through his torso, clips through it. There's just so much. This is like ugly and sloppy. I'm sorry, I really disagree. And I think part of it is that like I like this is like when Peter Jackson did his AI video for the Beatles. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
really, really bad. I think it all looks like that, and like you
Yeah,
were
oh, it
saying,
all
like
looks like dog shit.
in 10 years, if it ever
I do
gets
agree with
energy efficient, blah 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 blah, it's like, well, okay, no, not to dismiss you, but it's just like, okay, but
yeah, no, I know
it
what you
still
mean.
can't. They still haven't gotten past that. It can't do more than 6 seconds before it dies.
I do think I
Also,
very much agree with that. I
It's just
mean, I'll just say
montage.
brief. I
yeah,
will say even what I find interesting about this video, and just to clarify the point, is I think the promise of it is deranged, which is like we're gonna make normal movies with this stuff, and you're gonna use Google and type in whatever, and that just
and get
seems
your custom movie.
totally chaotic. I think like the best case scenario would be that there is some grotesque new art form in which people clip through walls, but it has some weird appeal. And whether or not anybody wants that, we will find out.
Yeah, like the
But
only
I agree.
Right.
God, the only person
I
I would
don't think the pursuit of it being real is a good idea. I think the more there's an obsession with the real, the uncanny valley effect is just going to be absolutely
the only
nightmarish for the next
Yeah,
the
yeah, it will
only
not produce
person
anything
the only person
good.
who's gonna sorry, this is going on for a little too long, and just like the only person I think that would like do anything even remotely like quote unquote interesting with that is like Harmony Korine or something like that, and even him, he would do it
Mm,
in the most annoying
Yeah, but
way.
I mean, whatever. Yeah.
Spring
I
Breakers
did
was
want
good.
to quickly touch on what somebody in chat said. Fire Whisker said the question is how many people are aware of the differences between a Gen AI produced artwork and a human produced one. And I want to touch on this for one reason, because I read a headline on PC Gamer today that was like, study shows that most people can't tell the difference, only like 61%. And I was like, wait, that's the majority of times then. They can tell that what that study shows is that people usually can tell the difference between AI, Gen AI, and human produced works. But they chose to like say that it suggested that we can't. That drove me crazy. I was like, that you're either the study stated its results incorrectly or you are framing it incorrectly. But in either case, like this means that most of the time people can tell. So anyway,
Didn't
that was
YouTube
just like bothering me, and I had to get it out somewhere. And so
didn't
that's what you all get. You're welcome.
didn't
Um,
YouTube also demonetize all the AI slop content?
did they? I don't know.
I
I think they did because
yeah,
like
I'm pretty
because everyone was just they were just uploading so much of it.
do you, do you find
Um,
it easier? Sorry, just one more question about the AI,
okay,
very
okay.
quickly for both of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you find it easier to differentiate AI art from like deep fakery stuff? So like this thing that I had shared with Chris that he thinks is a monstrosity, and I don't necessarily disagree. You will know the second you see it what it is. But then there's the stuff like the bunnies jumping on the trampoline. Did you see this yesterday?
No.
Do you know about this? There's a video of like bunnies jumping on a trampoline, and like it is blowing up on TikTok because for a lot of people it seems like it's the video where they're like, "Oh, fuck, I didn't know
I
that
mean,
was fake."
correct me if I'm wrong, but deepfakes and AI are one and the same, are they not?
Yes, but I'm saying I guess the intent. Like if you see somebody trying to make art, it requires I don't know,
Mm.
this is maybe too stoned college dorm room stuff here. When somebody's trying to make something creative, it is going to like use cuts, it's going to use taste, it's going to use aesthetic.
Mm.
And for whatever reason, I feel like I can spot that. Like I can spot when it's like, oh, this doesn't feel like it was
Yeah, when
made
it's
by a
just like sort of a
human.
random mishmash, when
Yes,
it's like
where it's
a
like, oh, if you
weird
were trying to
fever
make something look
dream
like
of
security
transitions.
footage,
Yeah.
yeah, like security footage in your backyard. I don't know. I feel like that's the stuff that like I would be more likely to fall for. And I just find that strange that I'm more likely to fall for a fake version of reality than of like fiction.
Something
Boy,
I
I ripped the bong.
no. Something I struggled with a lot was like, and this is always like before I realized like I don't actually want to get into this any in a meaningful way was like the difference between RVC, which is generative audio recreations, and RVC, real time voice changing, and like there is a distinction in performance there, despite the fact that it's a distinction without a difference. Because ultimately you need to do so much mental arithmetic to sort of get there, which is like you train. It's like getting like I think for somebody a few years ago, I trained it so that like Drake would sing. You know, you'd put like Dolly tracks, and then you'd isolate the main track, and you'd get it. You'd use RVC to change it to Drake's voice, and like that's the reason why it sounds better. The reason why like Homer Simpson singing Weezer sounds better is because there's an actual performance there, and it's not having to create the performance. It's just altering the
Mm.
performance in such a way based on an existing model to
Mm.
create it. And like the reason why the final sounds bad is because they trained the performance and then they had it generate stuff versus like if they had just had another one of their guys say that
Yeah, like
and then
layer of voice on top of voice.
yeah, like altered a pre-existing performance to do that. And that's but like at this point it doesn't matter because there's no like getting out of the sort of nuance of that discussion. But that's closer to sort of I don't know. The bunny thing looks troubling. It just looks like they're gonna make creepypasta out of it. I don't know. This just
Man.
looks like they're gonna do
All right.
creepypasta stuff.
Okay, we're moving on to the next question. I've decided. From Drew. Have you guys done any summer things this summer? Anything you've still been meaning to do? I've been to the beach a couple times. It's been fun.
I gotta
Um,
go.
yeah, I mean, with the caveat that as someone who used to live in California, New York's beaches are absolute garbage. They are dog water. But, you know, a beach day is a beach day, and it's really more about the people you're with. And so I went with friends and had a delightful time.
Which beach are you going to?
Let's see. We went to Rockaway.
Which beach in Rockaway? Did you go to Tilden or Maine?
Let's see. First time, what?
I said, did you go to Tilden or did you go to Maine? You know.
I've forgotten their names, but we went to the one that everybody goes to the first time. And the second time that I went to the more like queer, I guess, like topless beach
Okay, so you went
or
from
whatever.
regular Rockaway
That was
to,
fun.
to Tilden. Yeah, okay.
Yes, yeah. They have a really nice little
Beaches
hot
are
dog
so
booth
good.
there. I got a great hot dog. That was one of those like I think that like if we're going to do a ranking of best places to have a hot dog, and like this seems counterintuitive because, you know, a hot dog being around sand, you're like, oh, that's not going to be a great time.
Doesn't matter.
But no, a beach hot dog is the best hot dog. It takes number one easily.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. I think the only thing that I would put behind that is maybe like right at second place, street vendor hot dog Battery Park is like one of my favorite New York things. Like that is like you have the view of like not that I've ever even gone to the Statue of Liberty, but there's something about just being at like literally the southern tip of Manhattan eating a street vendor dog about to get on the Staten Island ferry that is like I love it. I have done
Battery,
it so many times.
yeah.
I have like oh
Battery Park is in a natural place, like physically.
yeah.
It's just it shouldn't exist. You know what I mean? Like the entire area around there. It is one of the best weird movie theaters is the Regal down there because it's
Yes.
because nobody knows that it's there, and so as a result,
When we lived there, we went there all the time, and I share just a very quick
Yeah, go
movie
ahead.
going story because it's one of the most bonkers things. So my wife and I were dating at the time, and we like both got off work. She was working in production, I was like freelance. And we're like, oh, we want to go see Live Die Repeat / Edge of Tomorrow, and we can go do it in the middle of the day. It's gonna be like Tuesday at like 10:40 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And we go down to this theater. In this theater, as you're describing, nobody knows it exists,
Mhm.
despite it being humongous
It's
and
giant.
built into a skyscraper on the southwest side of Manhattan. It
Yeah.
just does not make sense. So we go in and we go up this giant cavern and we go into the movie. And it's 10:45 on a Tuesday. Nobody's there on 7 p.m. on a Friday. So like empty. And we like sit, and this one dude comes in right as the trailers are starting, and he's wearing the biggest trench coat I've ever seen, and he's holstering something in it that looks like it's about like 2 or 3 feet tall and thin, and he's like really does not want us to see it, and we are at this point like, well, this isn't great, and the
Yeah.
trailers start, and every time a sexy thing happens in a trailer, this dude just goes, mm.
Oh
Mm.
no.
Don't like
Oh
that.
The whole
no.
time. So we're like, oh no. And they're like, do we move? And you're doing that thing where you're kind of like looking at each other, but you don't want to say anything, and then you're kind of mumbling, and you're like, maybe they doesn't hear us. But he's like literally just like a seat or two down. And then as the movie starts, he reaches in and I'm like, well, here it is. This is the end for us. And he pulls out the biggest sub sandwich
I knew it.
I have
I knew it was a
ever
fucking hoagie. I
seen.
knew it was a sandwich.
Huge. And then proceeds to, for the first like half hour of this movie, duck style, eat this sandwich. I mean, it never leaves the front of his face. He never lowers it. It just begins outstretched and then slowly disappears into his body. And like tomato and lettuce and vinegar and olive oil is spilling everywhere. It's like somehow getting on us. But we're so happy that we're not going to die.
It's like being in the front row at SeaWorld. You're like, whoa.
Truly. And that scene where like Emily Blunt in the movie, she like it's in every trailer where she like
she
bends
goes-
down
yeah,
in a weird way, like
yeah.
yoga positions. And the noise that came from this man in the mix of sexuality, joy, and hunger, I will never forget it.
Can I?
And I can.
This is. I'll make this quick. This is reminding
Please.
me. This is reminding me of the time I saw the Joker, and in the theater, and the guy next to me who was wearing like a Cedric the Entertainer style pork pie hat. You know what I mean? And it was one of those ones where you could recline. It was
Yeah.
Regal Essex. He like movie starts, full recline, shows off no socks, and I'm like, well, I can't complain. I'm watching the Joker movie. What am I going to say? Sir, please put your shoes back on at the Joker movie? No, he won.
I mean, when you said
That's
pork pie hat,
checkmate.
I really wanted him to have like a hamburger underneath his hat. That
No,
would really sell
no,
it
it
for
was like
me.
a King of
But no,
Comedy style. It's like a little white Trilby style situation, and I'm
oh
just like,
no,
he's just like a big like a suit that doesn't fit well, and he
no,
just toes up, and I'm like, he won,
no.
he won.
That's
Man, this
such a
is
power move.
I really am learning a lot of ways today though of like how I could bring elaborate food objects into a movie theater. Because
I
for
did,
me, like my thinking was always limited to just, oh, like somebody has a bag, like a purse or whatever, and you put something in there. But no, like you could have a trench coat, you
yeah.
could have a
Oh
little hat
yeah.
with a burger under
Oh
it.
yeah,
Like there are all these things that I've never thought of. You could like have fucking hot dogs come out of your sleeves like you're an assassin from Assassin's Creed.
yeah.
Like
Just through
there are all
the
these
finger,
options.
that you've cut off. Yeah.
Yes. God, that'd be
Um.
so good.
Oh, the
Somebody
other
be like, "Is that man eating his fingers?" And it's like, "No, it's just a hot dog. Calm down.
last thing
You're
I will
fucking weird."
last thing I'll say in terms of weird regional New York City movie things is that if you get a chance, see a 10 o'clock in the morning movie at Regal AMC because there's a Lavazza down there and you can get a nice latte and then just bring that up with popcorn. And that's how I saw Crimes of the Future by myself. Was iced popcorn and a latte, and when I left, Roe v. Wade was overturned. I left the movie theater. It was like, oh, 10 a.m. movie,
I was
sipping my
not expecting
latte.
that
Oh,
twist.
abortion's illegal now. Good Cronenberg movie. I still need to watch The Shrouds.
Oh my
Phenomenal.
god.
All right. All right. Next question. From my once was a cat. Any tips for keeping busy when being between jobs besides applying for jobs? I mean, mine is the same that I give everyone, which was very circumstantial. When I was between jobs, Tears of the Kingdom, Legend of Zelda, had just come out. And so I transitioned like 1-to-1 from working for like 8 hours per day to playing Tears of the Kingdom for 8 hours per day. It occupied the exact same chunk of time. And then I did the exact same things before and after.
I love
So yeah,
it.
just
I
get
mean,
unhealthily addicted to a video game. That's my
yeah,
advice.
I think that's I can relate, and that was Death Stranding 2 for me after Polygon. I am also just the person who like I need to be making something the second I don't have you mentioned control, like having control of things, and like
Mm.
I feel like I have to be creating the second I'm out and doing something for myself. But yeah, having a game that takes over is such an incredible feeling, and I feel like you end up having a relationship with that game forever because of it. And I'm
Yep.
glad that Death Stranding 2 was that for me. I wasn't out of a job; I was just out of my mind. But when my wife and I had our miscarriage, was like right when I played Nier Automata, and that game is like so
Yeah.
fundamentally tied to my identity. And let me tell you exactly the game I needed to just throw away the rest of my life for 2 or 3 weeks and just live in it. And I think anytime you're going through a traumatic experience, I mean, there's research on this with stuff like Tetris. Video games have a a real knack, and I think an under-researched gift for helping you process hard times. Um, so yeah, dig in a game.
I don't have a
Yeah.
game. I don't
With the
have a
caveat that, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I guess it means like I don't know what game I used to I know that like I got way too into Magic the Gathering Arena and lost like a couple $100
Hell yeah.
during COVID, and I would say don't do that. And in fact, I did get like Mythic or Diamond, whatever the top tier is for draft. I basically did that. I made a Scoot Swarm deck that basically would crash the game half the time, and the other half I would win. And then I got to the whatever like the top tier of limited was, and then I said, okay, I think I can stop playing this.
I will say maybe more real advice because, you know, I remember my like initial Tears of the Kingdom period fondly. And then I remember like after a couple weeks, I sort of began to feel very wayward and listless, even while doing that. And like even while performing other activities that I enjoyed. And so I think the real answer is like, you know, you are fundamentally when you're out of a job, like you have more time. And you always think, oh, what would I do if I just had more time in my life, if I wasn't working constantly? Do that thing, like whatever it is, whatever you've been meaning to take up, as long as it's not too expensive, because obviously you're not making money. But like, you know, a hobby or exercise or some sort of project, Like do that. Um, like do that during the time that you're not applying for jobs, because that will be more fulfilling, and you won't start to just feel like, who am I? I have no purpose, all this other stuff, which, we shouldn't feel that way. Our job shouldn't be our lives, but it's capitalism. So there's going to be some part of your identity that's tied up in all of that. Find a way to decouple those things. Find some other part of yourself that you enjoy and work on that. All right. From Send. What is the Final Fantasy VII of sandwiches? No, I will not elaborate. Interpret as you will.
I already have the answer. I already did it.
All right, fantastic. Go, 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 go.
It's a cheeseburger.
Ooh, interesting.
See? And here's why. Here's why it's a cheeseburger. Because before it, you're eating all these normal sandwiches. And then one day somebody's like, do you know you can have this hot piece of beef? And you're like, oh, wow, it's the future of sandwiches. And everybody has their first one when they're a little kid, and they move on to enjoy other things, but you never get tired of a cheeseburger.
The cheeseburger, I will say, is the Final Fantasy V of games. If you're in Japan, for Japanese studies, it's more the Final Fantasy V. I think for Americans and Westerners, yeah, it's the Final Fantasy. I was gonna say patty melt for some reason, and I don't want to really elaborate.
Okay, that's fair. I would say for me, like if we're talking about, I would put it more Final Fantasy VII more in the modern context of like, something that on one hand definitely defined a genre and is very important, but on the other hand is like maybe a little bit overrated and perhaps too ubiquitous at this point. And so then I'd say the bacon, egg, and cheese, especially as it pertains to New York, where everyone is like, it's the sandwich of the place, but it's also like, yeah, okay, sort of. And also like, I think that some people with both the bacon, egg, and cheese and Final Fantasy VII use it as a means of differentiating themselves. New Yorkers saying like, it's our sandwich. Final Fantasy VII people being like, I'm into JRPGs. And it's like, yeah, you picked the most milquetoast thing that exists. And also like other people have those too. Like you're not actually special for enjoying this.
No, I think that
you can't like
okay. So what? Okay,
claim to it. It's not yours.
I need to extend this metaphor because like, what does that make the chopped cheese? Because the chopped cheese is a fictional sandwich that is a psyop created because it didn't exist. You know what I mean? It's like an attempt at manufacturing.
This is
consent.
why I wanted to be on the show.
It's
this
an
is
attempt.
Exactly.
No, it was an attempt to manufacture consent. So I think it's the Final Fantasy 15 of sandwiches, because it's like you get people who are like at the time it's good, and then you eat it and you're like, I keep trying, and there's this part of it that just is not fulfilling to me. And then but then people kind of reassess it and we're like, no, actually this was the best one. And it's like, it's never gonna get back to even just straight up bacon, egg, and cheese, which is just what we go to, and keep remaking bacon, egg, and cheese in increasingly mediocre ways.
I'm a bacon, egg, and hot sauce on a wrap guy. That's just me,
I'm a pastrami, egg, and cheese man. I like pastrami on it.
Ooh.
Pastrami is really good.
That would knock me down.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. All right. Final question, very much in line with the previous one from Drew. What is the Final Fantasy VIII of soups?
So it'd have to be a fun soup that you don't want to eat all the time. Like, it has to be kind of messy.
Gazpacho.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's like an acquired taste.
Vichyssoise, maybe,
Ooh. I like this.
But it's not like Final Fantasy 16, which is like Boston chowder. That's yeah. Final Fantasy 6 is just chowder. And I think Final Fantasy, I think if we're being honest, Final Fantasy 12 is like New York style chowder, where it's like you see what they're going for, but it just doesn't completely come together. And then Tactics is the one where there's a soup, there's a bowl, bread bowl. It's just good. It's just the best way to do it.
If they had just let the chef finish cooking,
he's just let him finish cooking the sandwich.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. All right. On that note, I think it's time to end the show. Chris, where can people find you?
Yeah, people can find me at Post Games. That's post.games. And you can subscribe on any podcast app of your choice. The show is free, though if you subscribe on Patreon, You get lots of bonus stuff. And if you've ever wanted to know behind the scenes how video game journalism works, I've converted a course that I taught at NYU into a video series that is also on that Patreon. So for people who are any sickos, you can get that. The most recent episode goes live on Monday, and it's about the entire preview industry and its rise from the 1980s to today. So yeah, that's there. And you can also hear me on The Besties, which is a podcast that I do with Russ Frushtick and the McElroy brothers.
Nice.
Excellent. All right. Well, this has been Aftermath Hours, the weekly podcast of Aftermath.site. You can also subscribe to us, whether you enjoy the podcast or writing or some other element of our personalities, whatever you want. That's Aftermath.site/products. And yeah, we record this show every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. You can tune in and watch that if you want to. If not, we also are on every podcast service. Anyway, thanks to everyone who tuned in, and we'll be back next week. But until then, have a good one.
Bye-bye.